On to question 10. Call on the Honourable Member for Arbory, Castletown, Malew, Mr Glover.
Thank you, Mr President. Seek leave to ask the Minister for Education, Sport and Culture whether her department receives regular feedback on teacher and other school staff morale, and if she'll make a statement. Thank you.
Minister for Education, Sport and Culture to reply.
Thank you, Mr President. The Department participated in the Learning, Education and Development's Have Your Say Pulse surveys, which were launched throughout 2021. While staff across the Department were encouraged to complete the surveys, it was not mandatory for them to do so. Within educational settings, we do use surveys as a way of engaging with staff. The data retrieved from the results of the LEAD Have Your Say survey, although helpful, does not reflect the views of all staff, either within the department or any of the particular educational settings, as in some cases the uptake has been far lower than we had hoped for. The department is now reviewing the information gained and the data to celebrate some of the successes identified and to explore potential improvements in the ways to implement those improvements. The department engaged with staff across the department by various means of communication, including chief executive briefings held on a regular basis, team channels using Microsoft Teams, and through the task and finish groups, which have been established successfully to encourage staff input on key initiatives and changes identified within the Beeman's review. Thank you, Mr President.
Supplementary, Mr Glover.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you to the Minister for that reply. I've spoken to a number of teachers, a number of head teachers in recent weeks, and one is having to recruit 3 teachers following the Christmas term, which he says is highly, well, it's never happened before, an indication of low morale. So what is proactively being done to recruit? How many bank staff are we using at the moment? And what is being put in place, very importantly, to retain teachers and staff, because morale does seem to be, from what I'm hearing, not good at the moment.
Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr President. With regards to resignations from teachers, there's only actually 3 times a year that teachers can resign, and one of those is Christmas. So it's of no surprise to me that we would receive resignations at that time. It's May, Christmas, and what's the other one? I can't think of the other one. But it is quite restricted as to when they can resign. And with regards to the low morale, this is something that was identified in the Beeman's report. It's something that we've been working hard on over the last year, and I'm happy to discuss with the Honourable Member any of the concerns that he's aware of, to make sure that I'm fully informed so that I can address these. But with regards to supply teachers, approximately 120 supply teachers available. But as the terminology means, it's supply, and they can pick and choose when they wish to work in the schools. We did put a call out before Christmas to see if there was any further people wishing to come forward, and we would have looked at trying to fast track those in to the system, but we didn't get anybody coming forward because we are restricted on the island as to the number of people available. Thank you, Mr President.
Supplementary, Mr Morehouse.
Thank you, Mr President. What are the Minister's thoughts on the recently released Freedom of Information request that links to this area? It really was the last straw for some teachers who shared their thoughts in confidence and hoped to see a positive impact in their schools. However, prior to the data release, many schools didn't actively discuss the information that was provided. And once that became available in schools, that Have You Say document was used by some students in quite an inappropriate manner, because they were able to undermine professional people and ask them about their relationships with their line manager, their relationships with other people. And unfortunately, I was in a position to witness one of those exchanges. And I would like to ask the Minister what she thinks the implications of gathering such information in and then not using it in a constructive way is, especially in a time we've got this freedom of information situation where any information can go into the public domain and can be assessed in quite an underhand manner. Thank you, Mr. President.
Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr. President. And the FOI that the honourable member is referring to is the Have Your Say survey, I'm assuming. And with regards to that, I've already said that we've committed to looking through that information and looking where we can make the improvements and also celebrate any of the successes that were identified in that survey.
Supplementary, Lauder.
I hadn't appreciated that the lead survey results have been put out in a Freedom of Information request. But would the Minister then tell us when she anticipates coming forward with her action plan in order to address the concerns that have been raised?
Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr. President. And clearly from the Beeman's debate last year, all honourable members will be aware that an annual update has to come to this honourable place, and that will be due here in March. And I'm happy to, include an element of on the morale and the leader report.
Supplementary, Mr. Glover.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I will take up the Minister's kind invitation and have a discussion with her further on this. But what progress has been made and how much, an update if she would, on any well-publicised union issues within schools and how that has gone on over the course of the pandemic, because obviously it's pretty much been on hold. Thank you.
Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm happy to say that I have met with the unions myself, and obviously there is always going to be ongoing negotiations with the unions, and obviously we're currently in pay negotiations as well, so at that point I can't really say anything further with regards to that.
Supplementary, Mr. Morehouse.
Thank you, Mr. President. With regard to the freedom of information, did the department release any additional clarification about what it meant and the way in which it should be interpreted? Because as a table of figures, it's quite easy to misinterpret, to undermine, to question a member of staff about a current situation. And given the nature of that, it would be positive if the department could actually say something to teachers about the nature of that freedom of information request. And also, did the department actually question the release of that data? Because there must have been some concern within the department that a data set was being provided for the media, for the general public, that could be interpreted in quite a radical manner and could cause many problems to individual teachers in specific schools. Thank you.
Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'm not aware that the FOI actually came out from the Department of Education because it was not our survey, it was the Cabinet Office. So I would have expected the FOI to go from them, but I will check on that and make sure. And with regards to did we look at it and question it before its release, I certainly wouldn't interfere with an FOI request. We would provide as much information as possible at that time. And with regards to the questions within the survey, they certainly are not brought forward by the department. That is something that comes forward from the Cabinet Office.
Supplementary, Dr. Hayward.
Thank you. I wonder if the Minister is aware that when teaching staff who have young children that test positive for COVID and then are legally required to isolate, that the department then stops paying that parent who is the teacher who has to take time off. As a consequence, staff are feeling compelled to lodge with their schools the incorrect reason for their absence, and so you've created a culture where there is not clear transfer of information between the staff and the management of schools. Can she appreciate the damage that this does to the morale of the teacher parents who cannot legally send their child anywhere else, cannot legally leave them at home on their own, and therefore cannot go into work, but still have a mortgage to pay? And this is not a way for a caring department to treat its staff.
Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr. President. And clearly, the Honourable Member does have further information, and I really would encourage her to meet with me and share that information. But with regards to the actual question and morale, and then to bring in the COVID situation, I do feel it is really outside the remit of this question. But as I've committed to, I will ensure that I'm happy to meet with the Honourable Member if she can share her concerns, and if the recording of wrong information going forward is not appropriate, and it does need addressed.
Final supplementary, Mr Glover.
Thank you, Mr President. Will the Minister take up upon herself, really, to find out about teacher morale? Because it seems that honourable members asking questions seem to know a bit more about what's going on in the schools than the actual Minister does.
Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr President. The honourable member may not be aware, but I spent 20 years of my career before coming into this honourable House, and I still have contact with most areas within education, and I do get communications with my ex-colleagues around the island, and I do take these views on board. Thank you, Mr President.